Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Urvashi Sharma, Associate Professor, Department of Journalism and Mass Communication from Jagannath University, Jaipur. Today's session we'll be focusing on understanding the fundamentals of media writing, and also we'll try and understand different types of media writing. So let us begin with the session. Fundamentals of media writing. Writing for mass media comprises of print, electronic, or online media. Media writing can be in form of editorials, features, articles, news stories, advertisements, press releases, etc. It is different from all the other forms of writing as it emphasizes on information. Understanding the reader, which is the target, plays a very important role in media writing to produce an effective message. Readers want information to be complete, accurate, and precise. Based on the purpose of media, writing can broadly be classified as informative writing, explorative writing, descriptive writing, persuasive writing, narrative writing, and reflective writing. We'll look at them one by one in the session ahead. Informative writing deals with facts. Exploratory writings give reasons for how or why something happens. Descriptive writing tries to paint a vivid picture in reader's head. Persuasive writing tries to convince the reader, whereas narrative writing is all about storytelling, and reflective writing helps the reader to contemplate the event. Imagine a scenario. You are feeling ill and you go to see a doctor. Which of the following is informing, explaining, or describing? So let us look at the picture. You go to a doctor and you tell him how you feel. You say, my throat feels like something has scratched it, and my head feels like someone is hitting it with a hammer. The doctor gives you the fact, which is you have a cold. Now the doctor explains you what is a cold and tells you more. He says colds are caused by viruses that cannot be treated with antibiotics. The way you are feeling is normal when you have a cold. So this is the entire scenario. Now we will understand what do we mean by informing, which is informative piece, which is exploratory piece, and which is a descriptive piece. Let us look ahead. Describing means telling a doctor how you are feeling. You have used the word somebody has scratched, which means you're trying to create visual in the mind of the reader. Hitting my head with the hammer, right? You're creating visual in the mind of the doctor. Informing. Doctor gives you fact. He informs you that you are suffering from cold. Explaining. Doctor explains you what the cold is and tells you more about it. We see that these areas do overlap, but you should keep in mind that information is factual and balanced, explanation is factual but with more detail, description is usually about how something makes you feel, and persuasion is always biased. Types of media writing. Informative writing. To inform means to give facts to another person which are relevant and clear. One of the golden rules of writing to inform is contained in the acronym KISS, which is keep it short and simple. That means deciding what must go in and what might go in. Two questions can help you decide whether any piece of information is must go in or might go in. Why am I trying to tell my reader? What am I trying to tell my reader? This question gets you focused on why you are writing in the first place. Will my reader understand what I am trying to say without this piece of information? If the answer to this question is no, the information must go in. But if the answer is yes, you may or may not choose to include it. Your aim is to answer what are called the journalist's 5W and 1H questions that are relevant to the topic in hand. Giving information clearly needs thought and careful planning. Close thought about its topics and its audience. Points to remember. Think about the genre, audience, purpose, and style. Genre could be giving instructions, recipe, direction, manual, science experiment, etc. Audience or reader could be anyone. Purpose can be to inform, giving unbiased information which is reliable and factual because you're writing an informative piece. Style has to be formal. When writing to inform, make sure the language is clear, factual, and impersonal. Use short and clear sentences. Break up the writing with diagrams, illustration, pictures, subheads wherever necessary. Let us look at an example. This is an example of a recipe which is informative piece. Chocolate chip cookie recipe. Heat the oven to 200 degrees Celsius. This is a fact. Line 2 baking sheet with baking parchment. Chop the chocolate into chunks and put it aside. Heat the butter in a small saucepan. So in this example, just one after the other, the instructions are given, which are short, clear, without any room of ambiguity or confusion. You exactly know which temperature to put your oven on, how to say line up the baking say tray with the parchment sheet, then how much butter is required, how much sugar is required, okay, how you need to swift the flour, how you need to add a baking powder, for how many say hours you or minutes you have to keep the uh, cake to bake, right? So these are the set of instructions which are given in an informative piece that we see here, giving us an idea what exactly needs to be done. So an informative piece needs to be factual. It is written in a formal style. Purpose is to inform, so it has to be formal, short sentences, clear instructions so that there's no room of confusion in the mind of the reader who's reading your piece. Now let us move to exploratory writing. The main purpose here is to explain. It is subject-oriented writing style, in which authors focus on telling you about a given topic or subject without voicing their personal opinion. They are explaining you the entire event or the topic or the subject, but at the same time, they are not adding their personal opinion, so which means it is an unbiased piece. It usually explains something in process and is often equipped with facts and figures. Is usually in a logical order and sequence. Example can be textbook writing, how to do articles, recipes, news stories which do not include opinion or editorial pieces, business, technical or scientific writing. Let us move to descriptive piece now. To describe is to give description of what something or someone is like. When describing, remember your thoughts and feelings are important. How does this take place or how this place makes you feel and why? Points to remember: genre, writing a story, describing a scene or a diary entry. Audience or reader could be anyone. Purpose is to describe, which means you want to create a vivid picture in the mind of your reader so that they almost feel like being exported to that situation or feeling that feeling. Style is informal, and useful techniques when writing to describe is use adjectives and adverbs. For example, he walked away casually. Use similes like he is acting like a fool, and metaphors. Example, this girl is a star. Most importantly, appeal to readers' senses. Let us look at this descriptive piece. So here it is describing a character. Alia had a narrow, oblong face with angular cheekbones and a pointed chin. So narrow, oblong, angular, pointed chin is creating the visual of how Alia looks like. Her slit eye were clouded hazel, and her thinly plucked eyebrows were shaved into a decisively perfect arc that followed the slight curve of her eye. So you can exactly create the image of how Alia looks like. A long nose hooked over continuously pursed lips, which were painted a bright red in an unsuccessful effort to mask their natural thinness. Bleached blonde hair, made thin from too many years of her hair dye, hung straight down into an angular cut at her jaw. The sharp features of Alia's face were merely a reflection of her entire body structure, and everything from her skeletal arms to her paper thin waist screamed of unnatural skinniness. She walked in long strides, her shoulders back and face held forward, wearing a tall stiletto heels and bold leopard print mini dress. So, this description of how Alia looked like, how was her body structure, her color of her hair, the size of her waist, the it talks about unnatural skinniness that she has, kind of clothes she was wearing. It is creating the visual. So this is descriptive writing. It is giving a fodder to the imagination of the reader to imagine so that the character comes alive in front of the reader. So descriptive writing is all about describing and exporting your reader to that venue. Persuasive writing. When you are persuading people, you usually use a different style. You don't need to show both sides. All you have to do is present your ideas. For instance, imagine you had to persuade people to buy a certain toothpaste. You could write about the great taste or how it cleans your teeth, how it makes you feel, or how white they are. It doesn't really matter what you find to write about as long as you get them to buy it. But you wouldn't write about other makes of toothpaste. You don't persuade like this because it sounds like you aren't sure. So, first thing to remember is be definite. If you're writing about how great the chips are, keep repeating the idea. Convince yourself how good they are. They might even be a healthy option because lots of doctors are bound to like them. And chips wouldn't be so popular if they weren't really great, would they? Once you have convinced yourself, it is much easier to convince others. Be positive. It's always better to hear how good your idea is rather than how bad other people are. So write about things that show your ideas in the best light. For instance, aren't chips a great for a quick snack? Why are chips voted the most popular option in your school at lunchtime? Be pushy. If you don't seem to be sure, or if you can't make your idea stand out, then you aren't really persuading as much as you can. The Persuader's Toolkit. Repeat yourself. Don't worry about saying the same thing again and again. People forget, so repeat yourself and they'll remember. Even when you think they might remember, you can always repeat yourself another time. Be prepared, be personal. Use words like we or I. Always sounds a lot more convincing. We all know that, don't we? Use questions. Why would you use question? Well, they make people think. They also get your readers involved in what you are writing. So, will you use them when you persuade? If not, why not? Use feelings to push ideas. Words are your ammunition. In seconds, you can make your friends laugh or your teacher angry. So why not use them properly to persuade your readers? For instance, don't just write the pressure of doing schoolwork because there's no real feeling there. Instead, how about the endless trauma, the desperation, and mindless suffering that schoolwork inflicts on students? Once you can argue and persuade, and it should be easy to advise. The trick is to be gentle. It's no good pushing your ideas at your readers or trying to impress them. Instead, you should come across as friendly as someone who just wants to help. You can add information to this, perhaps explaining why and give an example of what to do. So, let us look at the example here. A lot of people, especially young people, go through the day without having breakfast. Many people believe that it is not necessary, or they say that they don't have time for that, and begin their day with no meal. I believe that everyone should eat breakfast before going to their activities. The purposes of this paper is to show the importance of breakfast, especially for students. The first reason why you should eat breakfast before going to school is for your health. Because when you skip breakfast and go to school, you're looking for diseases because it's not healthy to have an empty stomach all day long. It's very important to have a meal and not let your stomach work empty. All you're going to get is gastrals, a lot of problem with your health if you don't eat the breakfast. Another reason for eating breakfast is because you need food to do well in your classes. Your body and your brain are not going to function as good as they could because you have no energy and no strength. When you try to learn something and have nothing in your stomach, you're going to have a lot of trouble succeeding. A lot of people think that they should not eat because they're going to feel tired. But that's not true. Breakfast is not a very big meal. And on the contrary, you're going to feel tired if you don't have breakfast because you have to spend the entire day the previous night without food. The last reason to have breakfast every day is because you can avoid diseases if you eat some breakfast in the morning. If you don't eat, you're going to get sick, and these diseases will have a stronger effect on you because you're going to get sick easier than the people who have breakfast every day. You have to realize that breakfast is the most important meal of the day and you cannot skip it without consequences of your health, your school, and your defense mechanism. It is better to wake up early and have a good breakfast than run to school without eating anything. It is time for you to do something for your health, and eating breakfast is the better way to start your day. So, in this example, we see that the purpose of this writing is to persuade students to not leave this home without taking breakfast. So, now they have hit it in giving it three different reasons. First reason that they have hit upon is that when you go to school empty stomach, you will have a lot of gastric problems. Second reason which they are highlighting is because you're going to school to learn and there's always a healthy competition amongst the classes. So, in order to be the good learner and in order to succeed in your class, if you have breakfast, there will be a constant supply of energy. Last but not the least, it is hitting on the fact that breakfast will keep you full, right? Will help your brain and stomach to coordinate, which will make it easier for you to learn, and it will also activate your defense mechanism to fight against the diseases and be strong as compared to the other people who have breakfast. So this is what the persuasive piece is all about. You have to convince, giving reason to your readers. Next, we come to narrative writing. The main purpose is to tell a story. The author creates different characters and tells you what happens to them. Example, novels, short stories, poetries, and biographies. A person tells a story or event, has a character and a dialogue. It has a definite and logical beginning, intervals, and ending. Often has situations like action, motivational events, disputes, conflict, and the eventual solution. So, this is what the narrative writing is all about. You have a story. Now, in order to tell a story, the characters need to be developed. You describe the characters, you give different attitude and different attributions to the character, and these characters take the story forward, right? So this narrative writing has a beginning, then it has a middle, then there is a climax, and resolution to this climax is the ending. So it follows a wave pattern. Now let us look at one of the examples. How I learned swimming. Learning something new can be a scary experience. One of the hardest things I have ever had to do was to learn how to swim. I was always afraid of water, but I decided that swimming was an important skill that I should learn. I also thought it would be good exercise and help me become physically stronger. What I didn't realize was that learning to swim would also make me a more confident person. So, here is how the story is beginning. The writer has given us a backdrop where he thought that it was the most scary experience. Then it says that it was the hardest thing he has ever done, but he also tells about how swimming has changed his life. New situations always make me a bit nervous, and my first swimming lesson was no exception. After I changed into my bathing suit in the locker room, I stood timidly by the side of the pool, waiting for the teacher and other students to show up. After a couple of minutes, the teacher came over. She smiled and introduced herself, and two more students joined us. Although they were both older than me, they didn't seem to be embarrassed about not knowing how to swim. I began to feel more at ease. We got into the pool, and the teacher had us put on a bright colored water wings to help us stay afloat. One of the other students, May, had already taken the beginning class once before, and she took a kickboard and went splashing off by herself. The other student, Jerry, and I were told to hold on to the side of the pool and shown how to kick for the breaststroke. One by one, the teacher had us hold on the kickboard while she pulled it through the water, and we kicked. Pretty soon, Jerry was off doing this by himself, traveling at a fast clip across the short end of the pool. Things were not quite that easy for me, but the teacher was very patient. After a few more weeks, when I seemed to have caught up with my legs, she taught me the arm strokes. Now I had two things to concentrate on, my arms and my legs. I felt hopeless, uncoordinated, sooner than I imagined. However, things began to feel right, and I was able to swim. It was a wonderful free feeling, like flying maybe, to be able to shoot across the water. Learning to swim was not easy for me, but in the end, my persistence paid off. Not only did I learn how to swim and conquer my fear of water, but I also learned something about learning. Now, when I'm faced with a new situation, I'm not nervous. I may feel uncomfortable to begin with, but I know that as I practice being in that situation, as my skills get better, I'll feel more and more comfortable. This is a wonderful, free feeling when you achieve your goal you have set for yourself. So, in this example, which is a narrative piece, we see how the writer introduces his situation. He tells us how new situations make him nervous, and then how did he begin taking the swimming classes. He begins with the first day, then he goes down to how other students were faring in the swimming lessons, how he was faring, what other people were doing, and how he slowly and gradually learned swimming. And in the end, he also tells us how swimming has made him a better person, about which he has raised a point in the introduction. So, this is a narrative piece. Reflective writing involves critically analyzing an experience, recording how it has impacted you, and what you plan to do with your new knowledge. It can help you to reflect on a deeper level, as the act of getting something down on paper often helps people to think and experience through. The key to reflective writing is to be analytical rather than descriptive. Always ask why rather than just describing what happened during an experience. So, reflective writing is written in first person, it is analytical, free flowing, subjective, and a tool to challenge assumption, and it's a time investment. Reflective writing is not written in third person, is descriptive, it is not what you think you should write, it is not objective, it is not a tool to ignore assumptions, and it is not a waste of time. So, example of reflective writing can be job application. Both preparing for and writing job or application contains elements of reflective writing. You need to think about the experience that makes you suitable for the role, and this means reflecting on the skills you have developed and how they might relate to this specification. When writing your application, you need to expand on what you have done and explain what you have learned and why this matters, the key element of reflective writing. Appraisals. In a similar way, undertaking an appraisal is a good time to reflect back on a certain period of time in post. You might be asked to record what went well and why, as well as identifying areas of improvement. Written feedback. If you have made a purchase recently, you are likely to have received the request for feedback. When you leave a review of a product or service online, you need to think about the pros and cons. You may also have gone into the details of why the product was good or service was so bad. Other people know how to judge it in future. Blogging. Blogs are a place to offer your own opinion and can really be a good place to do some reflective writing. Bloggers often take a view on something and use their site as a way to share it with the world. They will often talk about the reasons why they like or dislike something. Classic reflective writing. During the research process, when researchers are working on the project, they'll often think about the way they are working and how it could be improved, as well as considering different approaches to achieve their research goals. They will often record this and in some way and in some way such as in lab books, and the question approach is in form of a reflective writing. Academic writing. Many students will be asked to include some form of reflection in an academic assignment. For example, when relating to a topic in their real life circumstances, they are also often asked to think about their opinion on or reaction to text and other research and write about this in their own work. So, in this session, we have understood that media writing has to be woven around the purpose and the audience. And then, based on the purpose, we have studied informative piece, exploratory piece, descriptive piece, narrative piece, reflective piece. So, in a way, media writing revolves around the purpose of writing. The purpose of writing determines what kind of piece you are writing. Plus, it is also important that you identify the readers for whom you are writing. Thank you.